Hello everybody, welcome to The John Show. My name is John, this is my show, and we are back with another episode of Headcanon, the show where I try to explain how my brain fills in plot holes. And this is a big one, y'all. This may be my magnum opus. Today, I'm going to try to explain to you, my dear audience, how it is that I believe that the Fallout games and Elder Scrolls games take place on the same planet. That's right. It is my belief, and it has been for some time, that Nirn, the planet where the Elder Scrolls games take place, is Earth. More specifically, where the Fallout games take place in North America, the Elder Scrolls games are taking place in Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. We'll get to the how in a bit. I would like to state here that it is not my intention to change your mind. I am not trying to convince you that my headcanon is real. In fact, I know that every bit of evidence I'm going to show you are nothing more than Easter eggs or nods or inside jokes. But the accumulation of these clues should lead one to the same conclusion, that these two franchises share a planet. But again, this is obviously not true, because while the Elder Scrolls games are an original Bethesda game studio IP, the Fallout games started at a different company. Interplay. The Fallout series began in 1997 with the aptly titled Fallout. Developed at Interplay Productions by, I'm just going to name all these people here: Tim Kaine, Chris Jones, Christopher Taylor, Leonard Boyarsky, Jason D. Anderson, Gary Planter, Mark O. Green, and Mark Morgan. Plus, others I'm sure whose hard work and suffering will never be sung about. It was followed in 1998 by the also aptly titled Fallout 2, developed at Black Isle Studios and published by Interplay Productions. These are the certified G's responsible for Fallout 2. Eric DeMilt, Fergus Urquhart, which gets bonus points for being a downright damn good hearty name. Matthew J. Norton, Jesse Reynolds, Tremel Ray Isaac, Rick Jackson, and bringing it back one more again, Gary Planter, Mark O. Green, and Mark Morgan. These games, and to some degree the spin-offs, Fallout Tactics and Fallout Brotherhood of Steel, set the style and tone for the world going forward. And while Bethesda may pick and choose what they see as canon, and change the game mechanics from being turn-based RPG with guns to first-person shooter with RPG elements, they didn't reinvent the wheel. It's still, for the most part, the same post-nuclear war world, where you must fight to survive not just the literal Fallout, but the tribes and mutations that have spread throughout the world. I don't want to do a deep dive into the Interplay era, because we won't be focusing on any of the games they produced. There are many YouTubers who've made excellent content focusing on those games, but we gotta mention the original games for two reasons. One, this is where the games and lore were established, and two, because we aren't touching them, nothing I'm saying should be applied to the original games. Settle down, Beavis. We're not coming for your precious OG Fallout games. We're only going to focus on the Bethesda era games, specifically Fallout 3 and 4. And I may touch on Fallout 76, but I've never played it, so whatever evidence I pull from there is purely cosmetic in nature. Bethesda. The Bethesda era games take place on the east coast of the United States, while the Interplay era games took place on the west coast and the southwest of the US. Fallout 3, released in 2008, takes place in the Capital Wasteland, the ruins of Washington, D.C. Jokingly referred to as Oblivion with guns, it was created with the same engine as Oblivion, which came out 2 years prior. Bethesda did acquire the rights to make Fallout 3 in 2004, which comes into play later. Fallout 4 released in 2015 and takes place in the greater Boston, Massachusetts area known as the Commonwealth. Fallout 4 is a prime example of Bethesda's main design philosophy, where they redesigned the VAT system, the dialogue system, and added more customization with settlement building and weapon mods. We'll dive deeper into the Bethesda game philosophy later. In both games, you play as a former vault dweller who left the vault in search of a family member that left before you. In Fallout 3, you play as a son searching for your father, and in Fallout 4, you play as a dad searching for his missing son. But totally different. In this world, you'll find people wearing power armor, basically military-issued Iron Man power suits, but like very bulky. Bands of tribal raiders that are usually out of their minds on drugs and cannibals to boot, a menagerie of mutated animals that could also be chimeras of multiple creatures, robots, artificial intelligence, which may include talking computers or disembodied voices via technology like speakers, your Pip-Boy, or other radio wave technology, ghouls, both intelligent and feral, and various religions and cults worshipping new gods that for the most part have popped up since the Great War. I am also excluding Fallout New Vegas from this, only because it was developed by Obsidian Entertainment, with many of the people working on it being former Black Isle employees. New Vegas is essentially what Interplay's Fallout 3.5 could have been, with production of their own Fallout 3, codenamed Van Buren, being very far along in development before the Bethesda acquisition of the Fallout IP. Even though Bethesda produced it, they didn't make it. And that's important, because Bethesda is the one seeding these games with signs pointing to the world of the Elder Scrolls. The Elder Scrolls games. The Elder Scrolls games take place in the world of Nirn on the continent of Tamriel. There are other continents, but we never see them, just hearing tales of their inhabitants and environments. The series began in 1994 with The Elder Scrolls Arena. Arena is notable as the only game that allows you to travel to all 9 of the provinces that make up the continent of Tamriel, a whopping 6 million square kilometers in size. Remember this. It was not very lore heavy, with the next game in the mainland series adding the foundation to much of what would become the heart and soul of the Elder Scrolls games, its world building. The Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall released in 1996. It limited the world to just the provinces of High Rock and Hammerfell, but made up for that with over 15,000 locations you could visit. Much of what became the lore of the games began here. The Daedric Princes, the Divines, the political intrigue, all started in Daggerfall. Ah, yes! The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, my personal favorite game in the series. Released in 2002, Morrowind is now limited to the island of Vardenfell. However, the environments were all completely hand-built, as opposed to the procedurally generated environments of the previous 2 games. Morrowind also added to the histories of the Dunmer, the Khajiit, and the Argonians. It also solidified, for the most part, the image we've come to expect when one thinks Khajiit. The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion released in 2006, again limiting the playable area to just one province, the Imperial Province of Cyrodiil. The story of Oblivion centers on one of the Daedric princes, this time Mehrunes Dagon, trying to merge his extra-dimensional realm of the Deadlands with Nirn by opening portals and sending anchors through them, attaching the Deadlands to Nirn. The game opens with the assassination of the Emperor, and it just gets better. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, so far the last game released in the mainline series, came out in 2011. The game takes place in the province of Skyrim and follows our hero as he learns to yell at dragons. Yeah, that's pretty much it. These last 2 games expanded on the lore, while also reinforcing the unreliable narrator motif that Morrowind started. This is exemplified by various books regarding the same historical events, recording different accounts. The lore of the Elder Scrolls games is always evolving, changing, and sometimes even contradictory to itself. And it's this unreliable narrator that Bethesda has tried to introduce to the Fallout series. To Bethesda, lore isn't static, it evolves, and sometimes it throws the baby out with the bathwater to tell a better story. And this is what the OG Fallout fans hate the most. Bethesda has a design philosophy. There are no sacred cows. Shh, don't tell India. This means don't get too attached to a character, faction, idea, or game mechanic, because it might get in the way of a better story down the line. Except the Brotherhood of Steel. Shoehorn them in somewhere. So they are approaching the lore of these 2 games in the exact same way. And on the surface, these games are totally different. Fallout has guns, Elder Scrolls has swords, Fallout has mutants, Elder Scrolls has magic, Fallout has robots, Elder Scrolls has automatons. Wait, those are actually the same thing. And the similarities between these 2 games extends far beyond just Nirnroot on the Pridwin or this robot automaton example I just gave you. But in order for me to be able to show you, first we have to look at something in our world. Cargo cults. During World War II, as the Axis forces fought the Allied powers, the Pacific Theater was arguably the largest, most treacherous part of the war. Stretching from mainland Asia all the way out to the small islands of the South Pacific, It truly encompassed land, sea, and air. To bring the fight to the Axis, the Allies utilized makeshift bases on many of the small islands throughout the southwestern Pacific, in the area known as Melanesia. These military bases consisted of small runways and refueling stations, radio outposts, and some small accommodations. To keep these bases running, the military regularly dropped off shipments of supplies like MREs, fuel, machetes to tame the jungle, radio equipment, as well as other technological wonders such as airplanes. These supplies were seen as miraculous by the native inhabitants, literally dropping from the sky in some cases. And when the war was over, the soldiers abandoned their runways, picked up their radios, and took their cargo with them. After they were gone, the inhabitants of the island created stories about how the white men came and stole the cargo, which was actually from their ancestors. And now that the white men were gone, they could go back out there and reclaim the cargo once again. They then built bamboo control towers, kept the runways clean, even built headsets out of bamboo to try to contact the ancestors flying above them in the passenger jets that they could see, to try to get them to send the cargo back. These people, without any understanding of the modern world around them, used their own contextual lens to understand the technology and logistics they were witnessing. This wasn't regular supply drops of normal goods from a well-organized and industrialized military complex. This was manna from heaven sent by their ancestor spirits and intercepted by these interlopers from a strange land. They took their context from their mythology and religion. In the Fallout series, the post-nuclear apocalyptic wasteland at its very core is a Western. This is exemplified by the tone of the Fallout series, but was firmly established in the Interplay era and was carried over into the Bethesda era, even if only cosmetic in some instances like cowboy hats, revolvers, and lever-action rifles. The mythological past of America is the Old West. Tales like Paul Bunyan, Pecos Bill, John Henry, Johnny Appleseed all took place in the frontier Old West era of American history, a time well into the industrial era. Europe, and even more so North Africa and the Middle East, have a mythological past that extends back to a literal mythological past. Wasteland survivors of a devastated Europe who may not have an understanding of what's going on and what all this stuff is lying about, I'll get to that, may revert to understanding things from the only contextual reference that they have left: mythology. I believe that Vault-Tec was already in Europe, what with the resource wars and all. They had vaults there too. Only, as we know from the television show, Vault-Tec does not like competition. So they planned for the best and brightest from Europe to be safely locked away in their vaults shortly after the resource war started in 2052, 25 years before the Great War. Plenty of time to get all the right people into the vaults and locked up tight by the time the resource wars ended in 2060. Also, Vault-Tec could exterminate their competition in one fell swoop. With all the scientists, engineers, IT and communications people dead, all the doctors, industrialists, billionaire philanthropists, anybody who could affect positive change, gone, Vault-Tec could eventually rule into Europe and take over. But considering we don't really see Vault-Tec in the Fallout games as a living, breathing entity, it's safe to assume until further notice, Vault-Tec is gone. And without Vault-Tec to lead the remnants of European civilization, they reverted to what they all knew they could agree on: their own mythologies. A modern equivalent would be like, you know how some people believe that UFOs and aliens have been visiting Earth for a long time, but in the past, they didn't have a frame of reference for technology, so they called UFOs wheels within wheels and chariots of fire, and they called aliens angels. It's like that. Science fiction author Arthur C. Clarke once said, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. If Vault-Tec ensured the demise of anyone who could understand the technology, then it's safe to assume that those who remained after a generation or two of surviving disease, fallout, and FEV mutations would not understand the advanced technology. So, where then is this technology I speak of? I'll show you, but you have to be willing to look at these images as being looked at through two different contextual lenses. Fallout is a post-industrial age lens with a basic understanding of technology and survivors that can decipher and disseminate that knowledge. Elder Scrolls is a medieval lens with an understanding that what they don't know is dangerous magic, those with the knowledge to wield it are sorcerers and witches, and demons and magic are real. Power armor, Dwemer armor, robots, Dwemer automaton, advanced technology, but magic also exists. Advanced technology, but magic also exists. The Pridwin, Dwemer airship, super mutant, orcs, FEV chimeras and genetic experiments, Khajiit, Argonians, and all the crazy animals on Tamriel, mutants and mutated humans, different elf races, ghouls, Draugr, the entity in the Dunwich building and the obelisk, the Daedra. I think the obelisk is showing either Boethia or Nocturnal, Krim's Tooth, Orcish Dagger, the Krevbekna, Black Book of Hermaeus Mora. And there's other things too, like in Fallout, there's Earth. In the Elder Scrolls, there's Earth Bones. Why is it Earth Bones? Why not Nirn Bones? Why is it Earth Bones, Todd? Why is it Earth Bones, Todd? Dwemer ruins are vaults. Their occupants gone, dead. Like the missing occupants of the empty vaults we come across in the Fallout games. In the Elder Scrolls, the Nords come from a frozen wasteland to the north of Tamriel called Atmora. I believe that Atmora is America. Atmora, America. If you travel north from Europe and you go over the North Pole, you end up in Canada. We could even go one step further and say North America, Nord Atmora. And it doesn't end there. There's more. We'll get to it in a bit. But this is probably where you're telling your screen, John, that's kind of a stretch, even for the headcanon. And while that may be, what I'm about to reveal makes that stretch not much of a stretch. My main piece of evidence, the one thing I rarely, if ever, see used as evidence, but it binds these two franchises together. The letters from E to S. These first appear in the Morrowind expansion Blood Moon in a hollowed out tree stump, then in Fallout 3 in a hollowed out rock behind Megaton, then in Fallout 4 also in a hollowed out rock behind the Salem Museum of Witchcraft. These packages usually contain weapons, healing items, ammo for said weapon, and a note to someone called S from someone called E. These are paper notes in the cases of Morrowind and Fallout 4, Fallout 4 being the latest game in that franchise. So how long do you think paper notes can remain viable in moist climates like Salem, Massachusetts, or the island of Solstheim? Certainly not thousands and thousands of years. And yes, I do know that these are Easter eggs and they're not meant to be taken as canon to connect these two franchises, but I'm gonna. Oh, I also have a mouse tool we're gonna hang on to for later, for future use. All right, let's get into it. Synopsis. The Great War began on October 23rd, 2077. 11 days after my 100th birthday, by the way. It's unclear as of the writing of this script who started it, but we all lost. In just 2 hours, the Earth became a dead land. Radioactive dust rose high into the atmosphere, encompassing the entire globe, then fell back to the ground along with traces of the FEV virus after a direct hit on the Mariposa base released it upon an unsuspecting world. This is the dawn era of the Elder Scrolls, the creation of a new world, although not a different world. Adam works in mysterious ways. Even before the events of the OG Fallout games, Fallout 4 hints at forces that can be Daedric in nature. Fallout 4 establishes Lorenzo Cabot as an archaeologist circa 1894, exploring the Middle East for relics of an ancient civilization that predates our own, the lost city of Ubar. There, he came across a helmet, a relic containing seemingly magical powers that gave Lorenzo immense knowledge of the past, as well as prolonged life, enhanced strength, and psionic powers. Possibly a Daedric helm of sorts. Not to mention the Fallout 3 official game guide released by Prima, written by David S. J. Hodgson, with contributions from numerous Bethesda developers, referred to the mysterious stranger as an eldritch entity, which sounds awful Daedric to me. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Europe was already devastated and powerless, literally and figuratively, from the resource wars. Vault-Tec, being the kind corporation they are and all, set up the European Commonwealth with their own vaults to ensure the survival of their scientists, engineers, medical experts, and of course, all the politicians and rich elite. But these vaults were filled by 2060, the end of the Euro-Middle Eastern War. Since Vault-Tec only started work on the Vault project in 2053, these European vaults weren't meant to save the inhabitants. They were designed for one mission only: eliminate the competition and ensure American dominance for future generations. As the Fallout games are taking place in America, the Merithic era begins in Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. The FEV blown out of Mariposa has spread all over the Earth. This FEV and the radioactive fallout mutated both flora and fauna everywhere, not just North America. This is where we start getting every flavor of elf, the Khajiit, the Argonians, wild mushroom forests, Spriggans, and every other weird animal we can come across. Like slaughterfish, reiklings, mud crabs, dragons, imps, guar, shock, quama, kagooty with a booty. I could go on, but I won't. You get the point. At some point during some horrible event, a small band of Americans traveled over the North Pole. Canada was annexed, so now part of America, and arrive in what was Northern Europe, but is now home to some pale-skinned mutants that call this land Marith. Their descendants will remember this event as an ice age, a freezing of the land. Maybe there were giants and dragons. Maybe. Whatever it was, these Nord-Atmorans were invaders to the land of Marith. Marith was already a devastated land. The entirety of what was left of Europe, North Africa, and Middle East were still unstable as the continent of Tamriel was taking shape. I always see depictions of Tamriel like this, where it's the size of Africa or Asia. But based on games like Arena and Daggerfall, where they didn't scale down the games, Tamriel is approximately 6 million kilometers, remember? That's about the size of Australia. So it should look like this. Now, no offense to my Australian viewers, g'day, but Australia isn't that big. Still big on my heart though, Australia. Fair dinkum. This is damage on a tectonic scale. This isn't damage that could be accomplished with nukes alone. This is the rending of entire continental plates we're talking about here. At this point, I'm going to interject a little tangent, a personal side story of sorts. This is my 5th time writing this script. The other 4 were just different variations of how I presented all of the evidence I've accrued. It's fucking Pepe Sylvia up in here, y'all. It's hard to keep track of where all the string goes. I was recording some B-roll in Skyrim when I noticed something that pretty much shattered my own headcanon. Something so obvious that, as an Elder Scrolls fan and self-professed lover of Morrowind, I felt kinda stupid for not seeing it before. Masser! Nern got 2 moons, y'all. Masser and Secunda. Secunda is based on our moon, Masser is based on Mars. They even use Mars as the model for Masser in Oblivion. Elder Scrolls got 2 moons, Fallout got 1. Case closed, theory invalid. So I shelved the script. But Pepe Sylvia, y'all. While recording Dick Jiggler footage, I went into the ArcJet building. Forgot what was in there, so I was just poking around, reading stuff, and I found this. Project Mars Shot. ArcJet was building tech to get to Mars. That's our Mousketool. Told you I had one. In 2010, in our real world, President Obama suggested that we might be able to bring an asteroid into Earth orbit in order to mine it for its minerals and other resources. Wild as it may be, totally within the realm of human technological possibility. Jumping back into Fallout 4, while this is most likely a nod to Van Buren, let's fold it into the headcanon. We're back, baby! Alright, so, back in the heights of the Great War, some faction, maybe China, maybe the Enclave, maybe some splinter group that left the Brotherhood before they were the Brotherhood, whoever, they get the Mars Shot technology and upscale it so they can move Mars into orbit around the Earth. This was meant as a last-ditch doomsday weapon that epitomized the MAD doctrine, mutually assured destruction. Rushing to upscale, they had the technology to move the entire planet, but they couldn't do it fast. So, like a generational starship, Mars was moved closer and closer to Earth over the next 200 plus years. The object wasn't to smash it into Earth, but to reshape the planet. Mars's gravity would cause devastation on a tectonic scale. Plates move, continents rise and fall, earthquakes and tsunamis creating new oceans, mountains, rivers, and islands. And in this new world, land still rises and falls, as with places like Aldmeris and Yokuda. We could even go one step further and say that the story of Elder Scrolls 4 is essentially Mehrunes Dagon merging his realm of oblivion, the Deadlands, aka the Wastelands of the Fallout series, into the world of Nirn, the Elder Scrolls series. And regardless of the outcome of the game, both worlds did merge. Tamriel is what remains of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Akavir, the mysterious continent to the east, is the remnants of Central and East Asia. Atmora, as I said, is America. But we won't find out any of this until the final Fallout game, because this is how the Fallout series ends, with the dawn era of the Elder Scrolls. At least it does in my headcanon. Thanks for entertaining my little thought experiment here. Of course, I'm not trying to void anyone's own headcanon. Feel free to share yours down below and tell me what you think of mine. I'm a big boy. I can take it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you like what you're seeing, like what you're seeing. Remember, we're the little guy, so help us punch up. Like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more. Hit the little bell down there. Do all the little bell thingies. Share this with other people who think might like my weird videos. And as always, thank you for watching The John Show. My name is John. This was my show. I appreciate you taking the time. You take care now.